Hey, welcome to episode 20 of Fresh Air at 5. At the outset right now, I'm going to say thanks for being here. Thanks for taking a listen, and hopefully you've listened to more of my episodes. If not, and this is the first one, welcome here. If you've been a long-time listener, I do appreciate that, and it brings me joy to have you listen and follow along. I'm hoping that you can take away from this some new podcasts to listen to, hear some of the insights, and just be able to connect with me. I appreciate that so very much. So without further ado, episode 20, here we go.
Hi, I'm Chris Nessie from the House of EdTech Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Bryon Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAtFive or check out my website, BryonCarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey PLN, Monday, May 10th, 2021, coming to you from a beautiful walk this morning. The sun is on its way up and isn't up yet, but it will be soon. And I'm enjoying the light earlier in the morning at this time of year. Birds chirping in the background, I can hear those, and it's just it brings joy to me as I get started on my day. This morning, as I stepped out the door, I started listening to Leader of Learning podcast with Dr. Dan Kreines. And Dan, thank you so much for the work that you do in bringing your podcast that focuses on leadership and leaders in our educational spaces and outside of our educational spaces, and just growing my understanding of leadership, even just as I listen to your podcast. And this morning's episode that I listened to was episode 161, and maybe it was 116. Anyhow, it's the one with Dr. Lori Baker Shenna, and she brings to the conversation this morning about talking about leadership branding and what do we do about our own leadership branding and how brand is important. And, you know, I was encouraged and inspired to hear her talk about strengths-based leadership development and how we have to focus on our strengths as we are leaders, because our weaknesses will be there, and if we focus on our weaknesses, we're not being positive and moving forward in our spaces. And the Leadership Journal Challenge for 30 days is something I think I'm going to pick up. I got to go back and listen to what exactly she encouraged us to do, but I think it was something along the lines of write down 5 things that went down well each day, and then what characteristics of you as a leader helped affect those 5 things. So I think that's what it was, but that's a soul-searching thing as we sit down and we look for the positive and the joy in our day, because it's so easy to focus on the negative and the not positive in our day. So thank you, appreciate, and have a great day. Bye-bye. One more thing for May 10th, 2021, on the heels of just talking about the Leader of Learning podcast, episode 161. It's a soul-searching thing to get vulnerable with yourself and go, what am I good at? What do I bring? How do I walk into a room and be present in that room? What are my strengths? And so, yes, this is a journey that I've been on, but I like how Dr. Lori Baker Shenna talks with Dan Kreines about, bringing that intentionally. So this is something I'm going to take up for myself, and I'm saying it out here right now, that I'm going to work on improving my understanding of my strengths as a leader. All right, have a great day. Talk to you. Bye-bye. Another one more thing for May 10th, 2021. You need a smile on your face? I suggest you go listen to the Knock Knock podcast with Chris and Miles, as Miles tells a joke for this morning has to do with tomatoes. I love tomatoes. So go take a listen. It's hilarious. So funny. Like it so much. And you know what? It's impressive that Miles, little guy with his dad, Chris, that's Chris Nessie, is putting out a podcast about jokes. All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day. That was episode 31 of the Knock Knock podcast. Go take a listen and subscribe. Bye. Hey PLN, it's Tuesday, May 11th, 2021, and I'm out here for Fresh Air at 5 this morning, and it's a beautiful morning. The sun's coming up and just shining on my face just now, and yeah, fantastic morning walk. This morning as I stepped out the door, I was dragging a little bit. Honestly, it was true, and got my son off to work, and he's driving now an hour each way to work as an electrical apprentice, and enjoying his work, so that's really fantastic. But I stepped out the door and I turned on Sons of Technology podcast, and I can't remember the episode number, but I'll have it in the show notes. And it was the recent one on video production for all. And I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And I looked at it and I started playing it and I heard my voice and I was like, whoa, there's my voice, because I am a member of the EdTech Army. And thank you, Kyle and Joe, for including me in that. You know what? That increased my engagement because I heard me. And, you know, you're out there looking at pictures of school and stuff like that. You find that picture of you on the wall. It's like, whoa, there's me. And that's so important. So that's an important engagement trick to use. You want people to engage, and they do. Use their stuff. So thank you, Kyle and Joe, for putting my little EdTech Army introduction about myself to the front of your podcast. Makes a difference. All right. Okay, I'm gonna have one more thing to say about this episode that I just listened to. And okay, so as we were going along here, listening to video production for all, I was excited because I'm like, there's gonna be video tools that I'm gonna learn about, things that I haven't heard about, things that I have used, and hopefully I'll learn a lot of things. Well, Joe and Kyle, you did not disappoint this morning as I was listening. You started off with the pay version of Camtasia, and I was like, oh, yeah, no, I don't use Camtasia myself. I should probably buy a license and start using Camtasia because I've heard wonderful things about it. All right, one more thing for May 11th, 2021, continuing on my thought about Camtasia as a video editing tool. I haven't used it myself, but Kyle and Joe talked about it on their All About Video Production episode that I just listened to. They spoke of WeVideo. I use that myself, not personally so much, but more with my class. And we just recently did a Mother's Day video card with my secondary students where they had to record using a green screen themselves for a little bit and do some video editing to make a video message for their moms. I taught them how to get a QR code for that, put that on print media, and make a greeting card that they can give to their moms. I haven't heard how that went because Mother's Day just happened and I won't be seeing them until Thursday, but I'm looking forward to hearing about that. All right, so other tools that you've used. Kyle, you talked about Adobe Spark Video, and I'm a big fan of Adobe Spark. Love Adobe Spark, and I use the video tool a little bit personally, not a whole lot, but if I need to make a quick video about something, I might use Adobe Spark Video to do so. You could embed live videos, so like this video on me I got right here, put that into Adobe Spark Video, but there's a trick about having it span over multiple frames because each frame can only be 30 seconds long. I really dig Adobe Spark Video. I use it with my grade 3 students and grade 4 and 5 students and get them entry level into video editing with this tool because it's very easily storyboarded. There are templates, but I teach even my youngest to build slides and videos from scratch right out of the gates. So it's a great thing for that. Love it. I'm a big fan. And the bigger thing about Adobe Spark Video is that it's the same place on a Chrome browser, like in the Adobe Spark site, that Post and Pages is. And I teach media design at my school at the middle school and upper school level, and I use Adobe Spark Post regularly to make graphics. I do them for my own social media. I use them for school. We use them for our newsletter. We need an icon. Boom. That's where we go to make these kinds of things. Yes, there's other tools that can do that. Canva's one of them. I went head to head with Nick on We Got Tech, the podcast recently, so we'll have to listen for that episode. One more thing to come up. Hang on. Another one more thing for May 11th, 2021, continuing on with the all about video production for everyone. And I was, still listening to Sons of Technology as we're talking about that. And they got into some great extensions for Chrome, like Loom and Screencastify. And I'm starting to use Loom a little bit more. I'm a big Screencastify guy. I paid the money to get the full version from my own personal account and making videos and screen tutorials for my students and teachers at my school, and I really dig it as a tool, and I got my students using it as well as a way of recording their screen when they're like doing like a demo slam, things like that. So many great things. Kyle and Joe, appreciate you sharing and bringing this collection of video. And that last video just stopped really short because my iPhone became full and I ran out of memory, so I had to erase some things so I could finish it up. And so I was just going to say that thank you, gentlemen, for your awesome work that you do and bringing technology to the fore and sharing a vast amount of resources with us. If you haven't checked out Adobe Spark Video, do so. The other tools are fantastic. Love them very much. All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye. Hey, PLN, happy Wednesday, May 12th, 2021. I'm out here for FreshAirAtFive. We got light rain coming down, and it's okay. It wasn't raining when I started, so I'm almost home, so I'm not going to get too wet. All right, this morning on FreshAirAtFive, as I'm out here walking and listening, I had the privilege of hearing an interview that I took part in, and I spent the morning just re-listening to a conversation I had with Eric Geis and Nick Johnson out of the We Got Tech, the podcast. And gentlemen, your podcast has really brought inspiration to me. And then we got talking about Adobe Spark and Canva, and we had this debate. And we recorded this a few weeks ago, and it was fantastic to go back and listen. Because when you're in the midst of an interview for a podcast, you say things and you do things, and this is my opportunity right here to reflect on my learning about being an interviewee. And it's not super hard to be an interviewee, but then you go, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have gone about it that way. Or just organizing my thoughts. And Nick, as well yourself, you guys do this on a regular basis, have an interview style podcast. Mine is me just reflecting on what I am listening to, and they're different and good in their own spaces, but it was great to have a conversation with you about a tool that I'm so passionate about. I do not get paid to use Adobe Spark. I'm not sponsored by them. I wish I was. And Spark, if you're listening, I would really dig getting some, stickers or something like that I could put on my laptop and just keep promoting this great tool. I'm a big believer in student creating for demonstrating their learning. And I find that Adobe Spark and Canva and other graphic tools allow students to make graphics that just demonstrate their understanding of a concept, and I'm really passionate about that. So thank you, Eric and Nick. If you haven't listened to it, go take a listen to Got Tech, the podcast, episode 85, and yours truly, Eric and Nick, have a great conversation. All right, thanks. Have a fantastic day. Bye. Hey, PLN, happy Thursday, May 13th, 2021, out here for FreshAirAtFive this morning, and it is a beautiful morning. Birds are chirping, and it's good. I was walking along this morning, and I listened to episode 64 of My EdTech Life with Fonz, as he talks with Katie Fielding about life, work, and creativity. And you don't think about life and how your life impacts you until maybe, mine just goes along normal. But then when I hear a story like Katie Fielding's, and she has a genetic disorder called cystic fibrosis, that she feels like she's drowning if she doesn't, have support and the medication and the science to go along with it. And Katie, I appreciate you being vulnerable and talking about how it was a struggle and a journey and something that you just kind of explained away and advocated for, but then as you got into high school and university, that you kind of just brushed under the carpet. I'm glad to hear that you're getting some support, and then there's a medication that can help you. That is fantastic. I have, as a former research scientist at a pharmaceutical company, that was a goal, to make people's lives better through the work that we did. And I'm glad to see and hear that you have a pharmaceutical that can help you. Okay, so that's your life part, Katie. And then you talk about work and how you're an educational coach and you're a technology coach and working with teachers and growing them. And then you talk about creativity. And creativity is sounds like it just oozes out of you. And myself, I am learning that I am a creative, and I call myself a creative. I started calling myself that name a while ago, and I believe that I'm growing into that as I go along and I create lessons and learning opportunities and projects for my students to do that are not straight out of the textbook. They could go into a textbook one day, but then I hope that they don't get stuck there. So yes, creation is important, and how we model that for our people around us is important. Have a great day. Hey PLN, it's later on May 13th, 2021, a beautiful afternoon out here. It's probably about 22 degrees Celsius, and I'm out walking as I deliver papers with my daughter this afternoon and do help with part of the paper route. So it's been a beautiful day. I've enjoyed it now, and I had school today, and I did some teaching, did some demo slams, other things like that, and looked at doing some pop art with Adobe Spark, which is one of my favorite things. So this afternoon as I was walking, I listened to episode 19 of the Good News, Brad News podcast. So Brad, I was looking for your podcast all week, and it never showed up on Apple Podcasts for some reason, but I found it. So I found it, and I see that Che and Pav were your guests. And Che and Pav, oh my goodness, so excited to hear your origin story and how you guys got started, because I didn't know that. I like your content. You guys know that. So Brad, Che, and Pav, three of my favorite people. Love them. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your days to talk to us about education. What makes you crazy? What makes you excited? And we're excited. I'm glad to be able to amplify and share the Good News, Brad News podcast episode 19 with my PLN out here on Twitter and in my podcast, FreshAirAtFive. Thanks guys so much. Appreciate it, and have a fantastic rest of your week. I'm going to go home now and sit on the couch and enjoy putting my feet up and relaxing for at least 5 minutes. Have a fantastic day. What are you doing for yourself today? What'd you do for yourself today? I know we're all really busy and full of lots of activity, but make sure you're taking time to take care of yourself. Happy Thursday here from Abbotsford. Bye-bye. Hey PLN, it's Friday, May 14th, 2021, out here for Fresh Air at 5 at the end of a week, and it's been a full week, a good week. Lots of great things have happened in my teaching and learning space, and I am reflecting this morning on the Staff Room Podcast, episode 85, Is There Value of Music in the Classroom? And, I read the title, and I knew right away that Che and Pav, thank you guys for bringing this. We're not talking about music class and about how we play instruments and things like that. Some teachers do, but for me, I am not a music guy as far as playing an instrument and being creative instrumentally or even musically at all. So For me, music is something that's in the background, something that I listen to in the car when I'm driving, heading off to the lake to go fishing. But I've started listening to podcasts a lot more. So podcasting has taken up the space out of my earbuds into my head lately, a lot for quite a while. And I listen to stories and things like that. And there is music involved in all of these things. I appreciate you talking about how music connects to us in ourselves and in the me. And what do I bring? It's because it has a connection to me. And I like how you use the exercise of, what's your playlist with your students? That's a great idea. I would feel a bit uncomfortable about that because I know there's a lot of kind of explicit music that's out there, and I don't want to bring that up in the classroom if it's not appropriate. But I guess that's where we talk about appropriate. We have those digital citizenship or citizenship conversations about being offensive to other people, though it might be very relevant to who that student is. All right, so I have an example from back in the day about music and no music, and I was in undergrad as a chemistry student and taking a lab, and my lab instructor, a grad student, brought his radio in and talked to us all and said, hey, you guys up for a listen to music? Because, when you're a grad student, you listen to music all the time in your lab when you're doing research. And we played it. The professor walks in, looks at him and says, shut the music off. And so we shut the music off. And that was that. And that was like, whoa, we just got a big message. You don't play music and chemistry. Hang on. One more thing for May 14th, 2021, following up on my conversation that I'm having, or my discussion that I'm having about music, the value of music in the classroom, with Shay and Pav on episode 85 of the staff room. So this professor walks in and he says, turn off the music. That sent a huge message about professionalism, about the seriousness of doing science, and about research, and how maybe we shouldn't be having fun in here, and maybe it's all about just work. And projecting that and taking that away, why did he say that? I don't know his background. I don't know what that makes that happen. But for me, it was like, okay, I can do without it. So I went through my whole undergrad without it, and then I hit the grad school laboratory, and I was where I had my bench space, and we had a radio. And every Friday afternoon was Black Sabbath. That Friday afternoon, my lab mate James would play it. And we'd listen to Black Sabbath and heavy metal and, King's X and all this kind of music. And, it helped make Friday afternoon go by a lot quicker. And it was fantastic. So I learned to listen to music in my workspace. And going through chemistry and in the laboratory, I listened to a lot of music. We'd listen to music all the time while we were doing work. So how can I bring that to my students? Well, for me, playing music in my classroom, I like to do it, but it's one of those extra things that I find I struggle to make time for, because I've got students that are easily distracted. I've got students that are, need to focus, and having the extra distraction may be not good. So about the collective, maybe that's why I don't play a whole lot of music, but I should do it maybe some more for transitions and things like that. But, and in my space right now, I'm teaching blocks. So I've got an hour, and in 1 hour, I don't take much time to play music and do things like that because time flies. I do use music as we're doing productions, and when we're using Adobe Spark Video to create videos, there's music that's there, and I talk about music in that sense, but not about popular music and things like that, but I talk about it from a digital citizenship standpoint and copyright stuff that we need to do. All right, that's my thoughts. Thanks, guys. One more thing about the Staff Room podcast. Shay and Pav, I really like the music that you have on your podcast. Fantastic. It impresses me to hear podcasters have grooving tunes and how they find those. And for me, I'm learning how to find copyright-free music that I can use and things like that. So that's fantastic. I appreciate your engagement with that. And about the 3 enlightened minutes, thanks for hearing me and others that we would like to still have those 3 enlightenments on your podcast so that we can have that extra possibly different tidbit of learning. And this morning on this episode 85, Alex, and I have to catch his last name because I didn't, he talks about being a teacher in the 21st century and how that is so kind of old now, that it's going on for 2 decades, and we have to do 21st century learning, and how we need to be progressive in the way we think about education. and not just about the way that we do education out of the factory model that came out of the Industrial Revolution. There's a place and time for that, and I don't believe that place and time is good for many anymore. It's good for some. This guy, I like the factory model. I like knowing exactly what's going to happen, but for others, we need to change it up and meet their needs. And I don't think the factory model talked a lot about SEL learning and how that's an important aspect of our growth and understanding of the content that we are supposed to be learning. All right. Thanks, Alex, for your 3 enlightened minutes. Appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to more 3 enlightened minutes. You have 3 enlightened minutes you want to share a short thought with Shay and Pav, drop them a message. Shoot them a message on Twitter, on Instagram, and their spaces, and they would likely be glad to have you. And I'm not saying they will, because it's not my podcast. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a fantastic end of your week. Peace out. Thanks for listening to episode 20 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. This is my opportunity to reflect on the learning that I've done this past week. And it's been a week that's been kind of surreal. We had a big event at my school get canceled, and that changed a whole lot of demeanor and brought up the level of cheer in the building. So that being said, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad it's Friday. I'm glad to have listened to all the podcasts that I've listened to, and I hope you found value in those. If you have, I ask you to share those with some people around you. Some of the podcasts, not necessarily this one, but even this one, it would make me feel really great if you'd pass along the message that I'm sharing with people around you. All right, that's it for episode 20, and hopefully I'll have some guest voices coming up in the next few seconds. Have a great day. Bye. Thanks for the first message to come in from Shannon Moore at @smoore_teach. Thanks, Shannon.
Hey, this is Shannon Moore from the 3 Caffeinated Coaches podcast, and I have enjoyed listening to your Fresh Air at 5 podcast because you bring a rawness to the experience, and I like that. I think that more people need to get real, and you tell it how it is and aren't afraid to be open and honest about feelings and experiences. And I think the best part about listening to your show is you definitely encourage others and celebrate others. And sometimes I don't have a chance to listen to all of the great podcasts out there, and you give me an opportunity to get a glimpse into the content of those different podcasts. I like the quick, too long didn't read summaries. They really do inspire me. And if it's something that I feel is, super impactful, I'll go ahead and listen. So thanks for what you do. I really appreciate it.
Mel Aveling at Funguli on Twitter has this to say.
Hey, Bryon. So it was an interesting thing. You just posted out on Twitter. You want to hear what we're thinking, how we're feeling about your podcast, how it's making a difference to us. So that's quite interesting. So I think it's cool, your format. Okay, so I like seeing your little posts on Twitter because they're only like 2 minutes long, or like there's maybe 3 sections of that because it's like, and another thing, and another other thing, but it's cool. I like listening to it because it's fresh, and it's quick. And you're just like, ooh, so this person's thing, that could be quite interesting for something that I'm thinking about. And yes, and you asked about, whether it will get us to think about, listening to someone else's podcast and whatnot. And yeah, I think that's definitely true. Because like you extract or you take out of there whatever it was that was like a big, the big takeaways or whatever. And we listen to your takeaway and we're like, yeah, okay, cool. I don't know if that's what what sort of response you're listening for there. But yeah, I'm sure that Shannon has given a more epic response because she's really eloquent and she knows how to talk. I don't know how to talk. But anyway, you do, and that's important. So thanks, mate. Bye.
Hey, Bryon. It's Brad Hughes checking in here from Ontario, Canada, host of the Good News, Brad News podcast, and congratulating you on 20 episodes of Fresh Air at 5. I can't tell you how much I look forward to your reflections each week. And Bryon, yours was the very first video reflection that I ever received on the Good News, Brad News podcast. It popped up in my feed, And I was so excited and grateful to know that someone was listening and someone was taking time to amplify my voice and my podcast space, among others. Congratulations, and looking forward to more continued excellence, my friend. And on behalf of all the podcasters that you amplify and influence, thanks for what you do and provide through Fresh Air at 5. Take care.
Hi, Bryon. It's Tim Stevenson. I really like what you do with your Fresh Air at 5. What it is it's showing us as an example that you're a teacher, but you're adding to the body of knowledge on the web, on Twitter, and on podcasts. And I think that's a great example. I'd love to see more teachers recognize that they have a voice and they have things to offer. And you have a voice and you offer a lot of good content. And I also like the way you edify and amplify the voices of others. And you say, hey, this is a good one. You should listen to this one. Here's what they talked about. So it's helped me. I know you got me going on with the 3 caffeinated coaches, for example. That was pretty cool. And I just think it's cool that you're another Canadian educator, another Canadian podcaster. We've got a little bit of a thing going, over here in the west coast of Canada. We've got Tim Cavey over at Teachers on Fire, and myself and my podcast, Science 360. Although my podcast is a little bit different than your guys's. Rather than talking directly about about teaching, I talk about what I teach and content, sort of science, space, environment, and stuff like that. So it's like food for thought for teachers to take into the classroom and share with their students. But, it's cool. We've all got our own little niche, and Bryon, you're doing a great job of sharing others and what they're offering and it's sort of amplifying and multiplying the voices. So thank you.
Hello, Bryon Carpenter and the Fresh Air at 5 podcast listeners. This is Geis from Got Tech, the podcast. Bryon, many thanks for all the content that you're putting out there. I was a big fan of your Fresh Air at 5 videos on Twitter, and then I was thrilled when you decided to make it a podcast. What does the Fresh Air at 5 podcast do for me? If I had to use one word to describe this, I would choose the word connected. The Fresh Air at 5 podcast connects me to podcasts that I didn't know about, or it reconnects me to old favorites. For example, one of my old favorites was Jen Giffen and Kim Polishuk's Shooks and Gift podcast. And then another one that I got reconnected to was the Check It Out podcast with Brian Briggs and Ryan O'Donnell. Another awesome aspect to the Fresh Air at 5 podcast is that you take the time to point out themes from each podcast and then reflect on what they mean to you and how these themes are making an impact within your learning journey. From listening to these episodic takeaways, I now have a lot of topics to reflect on throughout my day. I could take these reflections and these questions and themes and share them with my PLN, and we could all grow together. Bryon, thanks for all that you do. I appreciate you and the content that you produce. Be well and stay safe.
All right. It is the fresh air at 8 p.m. on the east coast of Canada. We have not walked. We have not listened to a podcast at the moment, but we are about to record our podcast, the Staff Room Podcast, in a few minutes. But we wanted to share a few words for Bryon in the Fresh Air at 5 space and for all the work Bryon has done. The Edu Podcast community is vast, it's large, it's tough to know where to start, where to begin, and sometimes it feels like a little bit of a competition. But Bryon is one of those unifiers. He brings people together. He highlights what podcasts are for and what you can get from each podcast, because every podcast has a unique flavor, a unique sense, a unique perspective on education. There is something to be gained from each one. And Bryon helps to bring people into those spaces and to unify people in the Edu Podcast space. Pav, what would you like to add on for Bryon here? Celebrating
You said that perfectly, Che. Bryon is always bringing the information from all the other great podcasts that we need to be listening to, gives us an entry point, gives us an opportunity to check out some great work that's happening in the Edu Podcaster community. So thank you, Bryon, for everything that you are doing for us.
So if you're watching the video, then who are you going to call? Bryon Carpenter. But if you're listening to the audio, then you're like, what are you talking about? I'm wearing a Ghostbusters shirt. All right, everyone, take care.
And with that, we're going to wrap up episode 20 of Fresh Air at 5. Thanks so much, Eric, Brad, Tim, Mel, and Shannon for your voices and your thoughts. And hopefully I didn't miss anybody in that. And if I did, I apologize. Appreciate you and thankful for your engagement in Fresh Air at 5. Have a fantastic rest of your week, weekend, evening, whenever and wherever you're listening to Fresh Air at 5. Peace. And also get some fresh air and take care of yourself. Have a good day. Bye. As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.